Hello? Yeah. Okay, hello? So, okay, hello? One second. Okay, so, uh, Naruto is a really niche game, meaning that those that actually got big were in the community at that time, but there really was no content where it was like, okay, hey, here's the basics, or hey, this is how competitive play is played. There was nothing like that. You usually kept that to yourself, given how the community was, and you just played. And everything was really kept to itself. So, um, me, in the beginning of the game, I was considered the best until I quit. Then Playco came along, and I was gone by that time. But for whatever reason, if you're interested in this game, I'll I'm not going to explain the complete basics because the game isn't difficult to understand. The circle combo, what all the buttons do, and how they work together, it's not really complicated. I highly recommend if you have a friend that plays it, or just play a lot of player match, you're going to understand the game pretty fast. But there are a lot of things that separate beginning players or intermediate players from top players. Now, if I had to give out one advice, or if I had to give out just general good advice for this game, it would be to stay calm as much as you can and always have a plan with what you do. You never want to just be doing whatever and not understanding precisely what you're doing. Now, let's see here. Now, supports are a pretty big thing in this game. Really, you're just going to understand what they are from experience. I have a habit of picking Kabuto, given just in Storm 2 he was a good support with this Sasuke, but Kabuto remains the same. He's not much different. So, let's see. I'll pick this. This is also good. Now, really just experience. Now, I prefer Chidori True Spear because Kitten is a lot more open. Kitten is a lot more open than Chidori True Spear because you're open. It's very easy to dodge Kirin and punish it. Chidori is better than Fireball, really, unless you're playing distant. If you use a quick Fireball unexpectedly, you're pretty much safe. So I'm just going to pick a random team, making sure it doesn't have dash cut because that's going to mess up my what I'm trying to do. Now, uh, so I guess this stream is really focused on those that are attempting just to simply get better. You might hear my mic kind of go crazy um, sometimes. It's like curling up on me. But I kind of want to just talk about what separates a top player from a intermediate player uh, and from a beginning player. So one thing is usually when you're in the beginning of a game, or if you are a new player, or if you are even an intermediate player. One thing that they have a habit of doing is being very predictable. Now, in a game like Naruto, being predictable, and once again, I assume you know the controls, you kind of have a general idea of how the game is played, but a really bad mistake is kind of trying to outforce your opponent. That's a very big habit that beginning players have. So what they do, for example, and hold on, I'm actually going to do something real quick. So what beginning players have a problem of doing is, like, for example, let's say that I'm pressuring this Madara, okay, and it's on block. So usually what I'm doing right now is just called a dash, is dash pressure. It's pretty deadly because it can make, of course it can make them, I'm actually open when I do that. But let's say I'm just, you know, and I'm just doing all of that stuff. So usually, if I start to become predictable myself as Sasuke, I actually want to make sure that the game isn't too loud, but I'll check that here in a bit. But usually, for example, so if I'm pressuring with Sasuke, this Madara, if I slightly become predictable with Sasuke, a very obvious thing that happens is that Madara, my opponent, feels like he has to therefore attempt to out pressure me, and so therefore everything that he does from now on is going to become highly predictable. I know he's going to stay on me, and he doesn't really stop to consider to think that should he actually do that and why he is doing that. So kind of try, for whatever reason in this game, when somebody highly pressures you, it's almost natural to try to reverse that and be put the pressure on your opponent instead of you receiving the pressure. You try to reverse that and put the pressure on your enemy instead. So Madara in this scenario pressuring me. Now the problem with that is that it's very easy to bait something like that. If I just pressure you a little bit, something like that, it really makes you want to just start going crazy on me. But honestly, that's just no-braining. You're just doing that for no reason at all. And top players don't do that. So what they do is that if they're getting pressured, they try to understand, okay, if I'm being pressured, what should I do? How do I get out this situation? That's staying calm and not just going with your instincts, which is very valuable in this game. And a big problem that Naruto has in this game is that you can get rewarded way too much by going with your instincts, and it's very easy to make habits in this game. And so it's really best to be your best critic and to make sure that you can see problems yourself. So going with your instincts all the time without having no plan in mind, of course, is a bad idea. And you might say, well, that's a beginner mistake, and if you say that, you have not played Naruto competitively, because that most of the time that's what really separates intermediate players from very good players. Because the thing is that your instincts will get better over time, but you will have top players. For example, there was a player who was really known back in the day. He was not great, but he was really good in the community. He was considered by most people. However, what kind of stopped him from taking the next level is that he played so instinctively. And so each time a top player would pressure him, he would rely on his instincts. And his instincts were good enough to beat everyone else but top players. And so he never reached that next step. If he probably took it slower, he would have got a lot better. So he was kind of always under the top players. He was always under them, and just by a good amount. So, but yeah. But he still talked a lot of trash. Let's see here. So, anyways, stay calm, and if you're being pressured, you just have to start analyzing. You have to say, okay, is my guard going to break anytime soon? And if it's going to break, maybe I need to start letting go of my guard. Like, you don't have to constantly block. Sometimes you can just try to fight them back a little bit. And if you're going to take damage anyways, you might as well try to relieve some pressure. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into that because that can get pretty complicated. So another technique you can do, by the way, is that, of course, air dashing is very vulnerable. Oh, that's pretty loud for me. I'm going to switch it. I'm going to change some settings, but air dashing in general is very vulnerable. And so, but there, of course, is a way to make that safe. But of course, the cost of it is to be predictable. And usually it's to switch. It's to switch. Hold on. I'm going to. Okay, there we go. So the moment you dash your enemy, you're going to want to switch to a different support. And this can be pretty good pressure. Now, it is pretty predictable, but in a game like Naruto, is that you want to constantly keep your opponent on their feet, constantly keep them thinking. So even when you do something predictable, you may do something that's just a little bit less predictable than usual, and that's going to throw them off guard. So if you're capable of staying calm, and if you're capable of constantly applying pressure, strategically, catching them off guard for just a second can be very valuable. Now, let's see here. Let me go back to my... Now, a lot of these characters are just copy-paste. Hold on. I don't want that. Sure. Now, you can really pick any character that you want in this game. Of course, there are characters that are better than other characters. But as long as you're pretty good at the game, it doesn't really matter. So, oh, I thought I went into practice mode. That's okay. So for example, what I can do here is that I can dash. And see, I actually caught him. That's actually pretty fast. Let's just go into free practice mode. So I'll just show some techniques. I might explain some things here and there, but I'll probably just be showing some techniques. So get used to switching your character a lot. Hold on. Since this game focuses, something that I don't like about it, since the game heavily focuses on switching your character, constantly switching, I would get into the habit of doing that a lot and knowing when and when you should not do it. Because if you do that, you'll get a lot better than somebody that doesn't do that. There's really no need. And so, for example, by the way, so if you have a team, here's something. So if you have a team, a three-man team, you're going to have like your default team, right? You're going to have, okay, my team, let's say, is Tintin, Gaara, and Sasuke. Here's the thing. What you can do, so if you notice Sasuke right here, if you notice my Chidori choose for Sasuke, if I switch, they all share the same D-pad, of course. But which D-pad, and the D-pad being like my items, which one do they take over, though? So it's my main character, it's Sasuke. So if you do have a main team, I recommend that you look at all of the items of your main team and pick the character. Pick the character that has the best D-pad out of all of them. Tintin usually has like the best D-pad for people. She has a lot of bombs, she has a lot of items, and you can just use that. And so, for example, if I were to pick, so right now I picked Sasuke as my main. I picked Sasuke as my main character for the team. But if I were to pick Kabuto, I would have got like the poison tags, etc., and all of that. All right. So let's see here. Hold on. So if you're going to do something predictable like this, like just air dashing them, what I recommend you do is get into the habit of understanding your opponent on when they think you're actually just going to commit to it. And what I mean is sometimes that you can do this, and then you're safe. So if they counter you, you can still dash them, and you can just do your combo or whatever. So kind of canceling is important. Now, if you get into the habit of doing this, That's really just a waste of chakra if you have your team up. So if you have your team up, what you're going to want to do here, and you're going to want to switch. Okay, but here's something. But what I did right there is an even bigger waste if you have a character that has an infinite. So for example, oops. That wastes no materials. I can do this until he's forced to sub. Okay. Now, but here's something. When your opponent has no chakra, don't waste your chakra to keep the pressure going. So your chakra is going to be the main way that you actually pressure them, okay? That's going to be the main way. Hold on. So that's going to be the main way. So let's say that Orochimaru right now has no subs. What you're going to want to, you're not going to want to do this. But let's say that Sasuke doesn't have an infinite. You really don't want to waste your chakra. Now, what you can do is, hold on. So let's say Orochimaru has no subs. You usually just want to do this. You don't want to finish the combo actually, but you just keep switching. Then at the very end, then you actually start doing this. Then you waste very little chakra. But of course you do waste your supports, but look at the support charge right now. It's actually pretty high. And so you're fine. You can still switch. As long as it's halfly charged, you're fine. Now, okay. So let's say Orochimaru has one sub. Okay? Let's say he has one sub. A very big habit, I would say, that newer players have. Let me see if I can actually... No, I can't. So let's say he has one sub. Usually they get their damage. You're like, okay, let me just go ahead and get that final one. So that's a pretty bad idea. So when your opponent has one, do as much damage as you can and make it last as long as possible. So if you do this, because eventually you're going to force them to sub. So you're going to make it. So eventually they're just going to say this is too much damage. But if you end it early for them, like, okay, you know what, I'm going to get that one last fireball at the end. That's what I'm going to do. Well, yeah, sure, you're going to get the fireball damage, but if you do that... Oh, what the... Okay, yeah, sure, but if you do that, okay, now the pressure's off. Now they're asleep on the ground, now they're going to roll, and now you're giving them defensive opportunity. But let's say instead of just finishing the combo because you love damage so much, what if you can get more damage? I don't know why I'm feeling it then. There. So, if you constantly pressure, hold on. So if you constantly do this, and no matter what, just keep on doing it, eventually they're just going to have to sub. And sometimes, a lot of times, they're not going to wait until all their subs are back, until all their subs to sub that pressure. They're just taking too much damage. They're going to have to sub. They're just going to have to. The moment it starts charging up, they're going to say screw it. So now you lock them, instead of them, I don't know, you finishing your combo, now they're in a far away defensive state. And now their subs are charging back. Now they can defend themselves easier. If you constantly prolong as much as you can the combo that you already have while they have low resources, like low subs, if you do that, then guess what? The moment their resources start increasing, they're just going to have to waste them. And if not, that's fine. Okay, they're just going to take so much more damage than what they initially would take. And that's much more valuable, because now you get even more damage. So in a scenario like that, it's a win-win. Because in the scenario of where you finish it off with a fireball, sure, you get a little bit more damage. You might be afraid, like, oh, they have a sub. Now they can just sub my next hit. That's great. Force them to sub it. And if they don't, that's okay. You just get more damage. It's a much better dichotomy than just finishing off the combo. So when you have pressure on your opponent, keep the pressure going. Don't just give it back to them for some reason. Like, oh, they got one sub. Time to end it. You just help them out. So if you stay on your opponent, that's valuable. And the more and more you stay on your opponent, the more and more predictable they become, because they're likely going to try to counter you, or how they're going to move, how they can escape, is going to become a lot more obvious. Okay. So that's what you're going to want. But if you give them that free space, of course, it just if you give them that free space, then yeah, they're going to take advantage of it. It's just harder for you. So when you're on your enemy, stay on them until they are just forced to leave. Not because you gave them a golden ticket, not because you rolled out the red carpet and they walked away, but because they used everything in their ability to walk out of there. Good. That's going to make it easier and for you to come back at them and pressure them, and it harder for them to survive. So stay on them when you can. So let's see here. Now, the next one would be not to waste chakra so crazily. A lot of people pressure with chakra a lot, but you have to keep an idea of when your chakra starts going low. Like right here, if I just try to fight and I have low chakra, that's going to be a problem, because the moment I do this dash, because let's say that I have probably this much, let's say about right here. Let's say I have about this much chakra. If you're not so good at survivability, guess what? And he has a lot more chakra than you. Eventually, if you guys constantly fight, your goal may be like this. You might think that you're so clever, and you might think, okay, I know what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is that once I get a little bit low, man, things, it's been good around here. You pressured him. You guys were fighting. You're going to head out anytime you want. You wasted a bit. You're like, okay, it's time to head out. But here's the thing. He's not dumb, hopefully, but he's going to pressure you. He's going to say, okay, you're low. And now it's going to be really difficult. You're probably going to waste some chakra trying to escape from him, some kunais, and now you've kind of put yourself in a scenario of where you cannot escape. Or it's extremely. And he has so much chakra. Now, if he doesn't make the same mistake, he should be able to constantly pressure you. Now, if you have low chakra, this can be very scary. So subs is kind of like your survivability. It's kind of counterintuitive, but the subs are more like your, let's say this. No, I think that actually makes sense. Never mind. But so we can say this, that your chakra bar is really your pressure bar. How much pressure can you put on your opponent, and how easily can you escape from situations? Now, and your sub bar is more of like your mistake bar, or sometimes your exchange bar. It's more like, okay, so if I happen to get hit by some things I don't want to be hit by, okay, I can get out of it. But it's not a get out of jail free card, because even if you sub, they can still pressure you. You see that subs really aren't that valuable in itself completely. It's more about the pressure and how you play. Subs just are there to get away from really serious pressure. So don't waste subs like it's just, like it grows on trees. So if you can, just be kind of more conservative with your subs and focus and stay and keep your chakra up, because chakra is going to be the key for you to handle pressure and for you to give pressure. The moment it starts going low, the moment of where your opponent's chakra is higher than your own, you have a problem. This means that they can evade more than you and pressure more than you. This is why it's very important to micro in this game, meaning to kind of charge while you can. If they give you a chance to breathe, get some chakra. You always want to make sure that you never go too low, because if you go a little too crazy and your chakra is really low, a good opponent should always stay on you and never just let you get away. Now, let's see here. So this right here, that's a big mind game. So let's go with this dashing. So with the dashing, this is a good travel. Usually you're going to use this to travel. Oh, wait, hold on. One moment. Okay, there you go. So what were we saying here? Okay, so first things first, don't kind of just act to act out. Never just respond to your opponent because you think, hey, look, I think I can keep up with you. I think I can go fast. You know, you might think you're clever, but that's probably what they want you to do. And you want to make sure you have a plan. Like, how are you going to pressure them? What are you going to do? And at the same time, you're going to have to keep in mind what are they trying to do. So if you can kind of start weighing options like, hey, they may counter me, but what are the odds? Maybe I can kind of fake, but maybe the fake is going to increase the probability that they're going to counter. Now, if that is the case, find some way to go through with your plan and find some way to do it. And guess what? It may fail, but now you can tweak it a little bit more. You may think that now there's more of a possibility that he's actually going to do that or something. And so as long as you're constantly trying to deconstruct your opponent, but at the same time trying to enforce some plan. So if you ever try to just constantly respond to your opponent, you probably should just probably 99% always lose your game. But if you can somehow apply pressure to your opponent, forcing them to waste subs, staying on them, even if you fail at that, that's fine. But as long as you're attempting to somehow implement some plan, apply some pressure, and even if it fails, that's okay, because now you could probably see where it failed at, and then you can try again. Or you might learn something that that pressure that you were doing specifically wasn't great, or maybe you might find a hole in the way he's attempting to apply his survivability. So that being said, as long as you have a plan in this game, you're going to get somewhere. But if you do not have a plan and you're constantly responding, it's going to be really hard to get somewhere. Constant pressure in this game is valuable. Constant pressure. The more predictable that your opponent becomes, the easier he becomes. So at the same time, you're attempting not to become predictable. Now, also, very basic thing, but I don't see a whole lot of people doing it. I don't have a second controller right now, but there are holes in people's combos. So if you have fast tilts like this Sasuke or something, most Sasuke's can actually do this. Can all Sasuke's besides Sasuke Taka do it? I think all Sasuke's besides Sasuke Taka can do it. I think. But when somebody, usually around the fourth string with many, not everybody, but most people's combos, as they're hitting you on block. So let's say Orochimaru is hitting me. On the fourth hit, you can just tilt. You can just tilt through it, and because they have a hole in it. And so I would get used to attempting to time that because you can force them to sub. But of course, if they sub it, they might sub and try to hit you, and now you have to sub. So that's why you do something like, that's why you do something like that. So that's what's important. You do that, and then you probably cancel their sub pressure, probably by switching or something. So just get used to doing something like that. Or, let's see here. Let me wait until Sasuke gets back up. Let me wait until, okay, I think I can actually do a setting. There you go. So, sometimes you can just do that and do that fast. Then usually you're safe. Now, so if you do not know about tilt holes, you really all you have to do to practice is as you're getting hit by a combo, usually just try to do this and like on the fourth part. That's also a hole as well if people try to pressure you and do slow combos on you. So sometimes people are hitting you on block. People are hitting you on block and they're hitting so slow. If they do that, so you see that right there, if someone's hitting you on block and they don't continue the pressure, that end string right there with Sasuke can be hit by a tilt. You might say, oh well, he can jump. Well, right there as well, you can punish him. So yeah, sure. Let's say that he does jump though. That's okay. Pressure's off. That's when you flip back as Orochimaru, or you reverse the pressure and you put the pressure on him. It's a whole lot better than just letting him just constantly do this and just constantly, beating you down or whatever he's going to do. And that's just dumb. So as long as you're able to kind of make him think, okay, he might do this, you relieve pressure. That's good. That gives you more space to move around and stuff. So really, Naruto in a nutshell really is making sure that you can defend against pressure and give pressure, and finding a nice balance. Getting as much pressure as you can when the opportunity offers itself, and playing as well defended as you possibly can, and still looking for any type of pressure possibilities that you can put on your opponent. If you can constantly flicker between those both, you're going to become a really good player. But usually, intermediate players, lower players, they're usually not good at that. They might be really good at constantly pressuring, but their defense is really awful. Or it might be the opposite. They might have good defense, but their pressure, they don't take enough pressure opportunities, or something like that. So if you can just attempt to find pressure, and honestly, to find pressure situations, they're not that difficult. Like, if your opponent has one sub, for example, you probably shouldn't be letting him jump around the map like this far away until he gets his subs. Because, yeah, you might think, okay, well, I'm probably going to waste materials getting there. But, okay, but even if you do, if you are capable of exchanging that, so he can constantly stay locked with no subs or just one sub, you're at a constant advantage. Because he's forced to play with one sub throughout the whole game, and he's forced to play more defensively, or maybe he's really good at pressure. Regardless, you're limiting his options, but if you just allow him to get away with it, then yeah, the game constantly gets set to a neutral state of where he has full subs, you have full subs, he has chakra, you have chakra, and I would say don't do that. If you can force your opponent to stay at low chakra, do what you can. But at the same time, always try to maintain an advantage over him. So as you're pressuring, so some people know this, I think a good amount of people know this, but what they do is that they waste everything to keep the pressure. So they're wasting everything, they're going crazy, and before you know it, they can't pressure anymore because they wasted all their chakra, and they probably have barely any subs, and they're like, dang, I'll let him get away. And it's like, well, you don't have to waste that much. All you have to do is constantly stay on him. Don't let him breathe. Constantly make him block, for example. You don't have to, kill his whole family tree. You can just try to stay on him. And maybe try to fake him out. Maybe you think he's going to do something. Maybe you'll do that. Maybe you'll think he'll counter there or something. It doesn't matter. Stay on him. Right there, get some chakra. And then start throwing kunais. It doesn't matter. You don't have to, kill him, but just constantly limit his movements to so where he can't charge chakra. And if you start seeing that he's starting to get subs or something, that's where you just want to start lowering his guard. You want to start making it so where he has low chakra, low guard, and so the moment he has subs, he's so much more likely. So you're trying to make that he's so much more likely to use his subs. You're trying to constantly put him in a handicapped state. You don't have to waste everything so he can stay at a low state. That's just not going to work. But if you can keep him in a handicapped situation, it's like you have a constant advantage over him. He constantly has to play with 10% chakra. He constantly has to play while his subs are recharging. I mean, it's just overall more difficult for him to actually play the game in comparison to you. So if you can manage that. Now, of course, if you're fighting a decent player, they are going to do the exact same thing to you. This is why you should not waste your substitutions all willy-nilly, and same with your chakra. You have to be careful. Anytime he allows you to breathe, if you have low chakra, you should be charging it. You should be charging it until he decides to say, you know what, I'm not going to let him get any more chakra. If he's going to give you that chakra, take it. And if you are a little bit more aggressive, you might be willing to fight with low chakra, so you can sacrifice him not getting chakra. So sometimes you guys are both low on chakra, and let's say I'm low on chakra, Orochimaru is low on chakra. Now, sometimes you guys will just both charge. That's fine. In situations like that, if you guys are both low on chakra, it is very important that you attempt to micro so much better than your opponent, because it's just going to work out in the end. And what do I mean by this? So if I have low chakra and Orochimaru has low chakra, anytime I can, if I'm doing this, charging a little bit of chakra, pressuring him, doing this, fighting, oh, oops, I'm going to do that. We're fighting, I'm pressuring him, I do that, I'm charging chakra. And let's say he's doing a little bit of the same. If I'm capable of getting a little bit more chakra than him, if I'm capable of not wasting as much subs as him, guess what? At the end, I'm going to have more subs, I'm going to have more chakra. And he's going to have lower than that. This means, once again, he's in a handicapped position of where I get to constantly apply power to him. So if you're barely microing with your chakra, if you're kind of in those situations, kind of trigger happy with the substitution, and if your opponent just thinks about these things and tries to just take some guard damage instead of wasting his subs, if he decides to take a little bit of damage instead of, well, we're not going to get into that because that's actually a little complicated. Sometimes it's bad to take damage, for example. Imagine he had a Kisame and it pushes me back and I'm on the ground now. That actually relieves so much pressure off Orochimaru. Because this means that he now has time to charge his chakra, he now has time to wait for his subs to get back up, and now he can choose to play defensively or jump up on me and pressure me. And if I'm in a lower situation, that is very scary. So we're not going to say if I get hit. But going back to the scenario, if we are both low, microing is just essential to everything, because your goal is to come out not putting him on the ground, but as you guys constantly fight with low resources, that by probably about 10 seconds you have more than what he does. Maybe he wasted too much chakra, maybe that he wasted too much subs, maybe he wasted all of his supports. Somehow, if you just get him by a little bit, if you have a little bit more, it's going to make him that much more pressured. And then you can apply that much more pressure. So, if you can do that, of course, do it. But guess what? If you kind of just waste a little bit more chakra than you need to, if you waste just that one more sub, you're that much at a disadvantage. And that's why at top level plays, really, you don't, in dead situations, you have these dead situations of where people are low on chakra, probably a few subs, and honestly, they require the most brain power, because whoever budges first, it's going to be a problem. It really is. Whoever budges first. Whoever decides to waste a sub first. Whoever decides to waste a little bit of chakra first. And those are complicated situations, but you don't have to know the ins and out of it. You just have to work on it. I mean, if you work on your micro on that, you're going to be so much better by just trying to get chakra while you can, putting pressure on your opponent while you can, etc. But at the same time, not trying to, drain yourself of everything you have so you can drain everything that he has, because that's not a good strategy. So, let's see here. So, let's see. There's not a whole lot else to Naruto besides that. As long as you can work on that, you will get better. So it's just about getting better at receiving pressure and getting better at giving pressure. Now, if you can do that well while reading your opponent, because you want to know how predictable it is that they're going to do something, that's going to make it better. So what ultimately separates, I would say, a top player from an intermediate player is that the intermediate player goes a lot more by instincts, and they do not attempt to optimize as much as they can on every little situation there is. A top player, if you give them a little chance, just the littlest chance to get some chakra, that top player is going to get some chakra. I would say the intermediate player does not do that. He does not spend his resources that properly. He may pressure just 2 seconds a little bit longer than he should, although he shouldn't do that. And the top player is going to punish him for that, even if the intermediate player may think, okay, well, he can't punish me that bad if I do this. That's right, he can't punish you that bad, but he's going to get what he can get. And all these little things are just going to pile up until he just wins the game. And so it's really just refining yourself. So let's see. In this game, don't go by your instinct. Do it. Have a plan. Stick by it. See if it works. If you have any type of advantage on your opponent, stay on them. Stay on them. And you may fail at staying on them. Okay, that's good. You're going to learn so much. He may somehow, for whatever reason, know how to escape you. Learn how he did that. then you can kind of just see how that works. Then you can use it. Or maybe you might find a hole in it. So you'll see top players, they know how to escape a lot without really using much resources by doing certain dodges. And so they kind of move in a way of where, if anything, they will dodge a lot of pressure just by using a kunai's worth of a chakra kunai's worth of pressure. It's not that complicated. It really comes from understanding the game. But you're not going to get better at that if you don't just constantly try to pressure your opponent while they're low because you're scared for whatever reason. Or let's say if you don't try to get better at surviving while you're being pressured. You can't be scared in this game. Like, if you're scared, it's going to alter the way you play. You're not going to pressure people when they should be pressured, etc. You might as well just lose. So last advice would be have something in mind and constantly work on it. If you want to get better at pressuring, work on it. Even if you're kind of scared because you think the player is better than you, it does not matter. It's kind of like yeah, you might lose the game, that's fine, but you're going to get better by losing that game. You're going to get so much more value. So don't worry so much. Don't let the win define, your skill level. It doesn't really matter. Because trust me, there are a lot of end quote top players, or there were a lot of end quote top players in the community, or there's players online that has thousands and thousands and thousands of wins in ranked mode, and they're just so bad. They're really bad, and they're just not top rated. They're just not a top player. And that's probably because they let their league define them. They let them being a hero, them having 99999 and thousands of wins, kind of define their skill level instead of actually working on their problems. And they rage quit when they lose and stuff. So if you worry so much on just winning, you're not going to get better. Because to constantly win is to not know why you lost. And you lose value. And so top players focus on how they lose. And if you understand why you lose, you actually get to avoid that. And you actually know why how other people can lose. And it's really just, what do you value? Do you want to win a lot, or do you actually just want to get better? It's one of those. So yeah. Okay, I don't know how to end this. Hold on, this stupid thing's in the way.